Welcome to the Wadeborth Podcast, where knowledge unlocks new paths and simple steps today create powerful changes tomorrow. Let's get to it. Hello, welcome back to the Wadeborth Podcast. Today we have a special guest with us today, all the way from the great state of Hawaii. Welcome, Clarke. Thank you so much for getting up super early on your end. But my friend Clarke Tuitele, did I get that correct?
You sure did.
Oh, wow. I always kind of struggle with the pronunciation, so thank you so much. It's hard for this German-Irish kid to say anything besides, Smith or Borth or something real short and easy. So thank you so much for being patient with me. But again, thank you for getting up early. I know there's always about a 5-hour time change between us, so you're always eager to talk to me in the mornings, and you're joining us and trying not to wake up the family. So I do appreciate the efforts that you put forward. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Wade. I look forward to this little talk story session that we have here.
Yeah, I'm excited about it as well. And just so when we were recording this happened. Our recording, the day that we're scheduled to record, was the morning after the big earthquake in Russia, which created a tsunami alerts through all over the Pacific. So again, I mentioned there's that little bit of tension going on. I know it was last night, and I think there was some waves, but maybe to share with us kind of what happened there. I'm just curious what that was like for you.
Yeah, sure. So, as you can imagine, living on the island, I'm actually on the island of Maui, but the tsunami advisory went out into effect around noonish, 1 p.m. our time yesterday. And I'm a teacher by profession, and so I'm at school prepping for the new school year. And then we get these alerts that are coming through. And on our island, because we have so many severe weather alerts, such as hurricanes, tsunamis, fires, and all other kinds of things, they have this tsunami siren system that goes off on the island. And so it went off. And of course, all the teachers were trying to decide, okay, is school going to be canceled? Is work going to be? And as time went on, it got more and more, I don't want to say worse, but more and more serious, I guess you could say. And it went from an advisory to a warning, which means that they expect this wave to come. And so they told us to clean up our rooms, to make sure your family's safe. Our school is located on the slopes of the biggest mountain here on this island. It's called Haleakala. That's the name of this mountain. And so we are totally safe. But if you live on the shoreline, or if you live on the flat area, you needed to evacuate. And so we did. And as I went home, it was just utter chaos. The lines to get back into town weren't that bad, but the lines getting from the lowlands to try to go to higher grounds were bumper to bumper traffic, hours. The Costco gas line, every gasoline station was just, you were waiting there for hours. It's as if people were not prepared and you're kind of panicking. Maui went through this whole wildfire episode a few years back, about 3 years. So
Yeah.
people are still trying to rebuild from that. And that same area, Lahaina, that was affected is right on the shoreline. So can you imagine a family trying to rebuild, and with the potential threat of what you're rebuilding possibly being destroyed? I mean, that's devastating.
Yeah. It brings up some interesting thoughts around, again, you never want to conflate the two, but it's like this idea of preparedness when an event happens. And it's interesting because I know, by the way, Lahaina is one of my wife's favorite, used to be before the fires. We haven't been there since. One of her favorite places to go. But I remember all this, the signs everywhere, like tsunami escape route. In everywhere you went, there was literature on the walls like gave tsunami. So it's like, when you live on an island in the middle of the Pacific, in the middle of the Ring of Fire, that tsunamis are, the likelihood of that event happening are great because they've spent so much time and effort to prepare for it. But yet, think about how unprepared so many people were.
And that's always the case. I think people either tend to downplay the threat of a serious natural disaster, or they just procrastinate and they wait till the last minute.
Yeah. But that's no different than what they do financially.
Exactly.
And so and we'll get into a little bit of your backstory, but this was so relevant because I know that was going on last night. So thank you for sharing that. But just this idea of why you've embraced this idea of the infinite banking idea, or just taking control and having a closer relationship with your money, is just along that same lines. You can't be prepared unless you have a close relationship with, in the case of being prepared for a tsunami. It's like, what's your route look like? Do you have gas? Do you have stores of, 3 or 4 days of food, whatever it might be that you need to survive, just to go quickly, because events will happen in life, either financial events, geographical events, whatever it is, right? These type of events, a hurricane, events are going to happen, and the question is, what are you doing to prepare for it? And part of it is just, the first step is just awareness. The awareness that I got it, okay, I have to prepare for it, and then finding some education to say, okay, how do I do and what do I need to do? And do you have a game plan in order to implement that strategy? And that's really no different than what we talk about from a financial standpoint.
You're exactly right, Wade. About a week ago, we started going through our 72-hour kit. So within our family, we have bags packed. We have important documents in bins that we can just grab and go in the event of something that would force us out of our home. And as my wife and I went through this 72-hour kit, now, mind you, I have 6 children. And of our 6 children, 3 of them are adults and out of the house. Child number 4 is 17, soon to be a senior in high school, will be out of the house next year. And each person in our family has this bag. They have clothing, they have essential supplies. When we took out the bag this year, we started to laugh because it had clothing for 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds. In other words, we hadn't even looked at our 72-hour kit for 8 years. And now that a tsunami hit, I was thinking, holy moly, we're lucky that we actually looked at that and made those updates, But yet financially, so many people don't even have a plan. They don't even have a 72-hour kit. And if they do, perhaps they didn't look at it in years.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually is a great conversation around, we have, at Factum, we have what we call a wealth scorecard, which is just, I call it a checklist. It's a checklist for a 72-hour. I mean, I think about us, right? So we don't have tsunamis. Hopefully we don't have tsunamis in North Dakota where we live, but we have blizzards and we have power outages and we have other things, tornadoes and different stuff. And, but we have a checklist. Like, hey, if we have to leave in a hurry, what does that checklist look like? And to your point, if it's not top of mind, we have a senior going to college now, so he's going to be out. So it's different, right? So now it's like, where's our rally point? And just all the different things that we prepare for, it has to be top of mind. It can't just like do it once and forget it. It has to be close. You have to have a close relationship to all those different things, which again is like, do we have a checklist at least to give us the basics of what we have to talk about?
Right. Do we have a plan? And even more than that, have we taught our children what to do just in case mom and dad aren't there?
Yeah.
Do we pass on that wisdom? And, maybe we can talk a little bit more about that financially as well.
So, well, thank you for entertaining the conversation. And again, thank you for getting up so stinking early. I know you do it all the time when we talk, but I just want everybody to understand you have a great story. And so part of this, I want to take you back and like have you just share with the listeners your story about who Clarke is, kind of where he came from, and what in your life made you think like this is the pathway I want to follow. This idea of like the money discipline and the kind of this idea like I want to have a close relationship with my money, and the fact that you're doing it on a teacher's salary is we don't want to forget that conversation. So very disciplined, but it's not to the point where it's fanatical, but it's also like it was just that level of discipline that I get from you, of having a really close relationship and understanding where your money comes from. And it's this path to money conversation that we've talked about many times, where it comes from, but also more importantly, where it goes and what is the right sequence of all your dollars. and
Sure.
and
Sure.
it sounds sometimes it sounds overwhelming to a lot of people, but I think you got a great way of making it so it's not overwhelming. And maybe that's just your teacher's background. You can take this complicated idea, which again isn't complicated, and you make it very simple and make it very straightforward. So if you wouldn't mind just taking a couple of minutes, to like give me a little bit of the backstory, like where you came from,
Yeah.
kind of what's your life, how it developed.
Sure. Well, first of all, again, Wade, thank you for inviting me here and allowing me to share my story. Um, I think perhaps a few listeners will be able to relate to what I'm about to share. But I grew up here in Hawaii, born and raised. And when I went to college, I decided I wanted to teach, and I wanted to be an elementary teacher because I love kids. While I was in college, I met my future wife, and as we got a little more serious, and knew that we would be together and get married in the future, she sat me down because we were both going through the School of Education as teachers, and she said, "Clarke, I have to tell you this." I said, "Shoot away." And she says, "I want 6 children." I said, "Okay." She says, "I want to live in Hawaii." I said, "Okay." And she says, "I want to be a stay-at-home mom." And so those three things hit me all at once. And I knew that if I were to marry this beautiful woman, that I would need to commit to these things. And my senior year in college, one or 2 months before I graduated from college, we got married. She was a year behind me in school, and so we would stay within that community. I would have to find a job, and lo and behold, I am a school teacher and have been. This is my 28th year of teaching, and we have 6 children, like I mentioned before. My wife taught for 1 year, and then we were expecting our first child. And once she got pregnant with the first, we decided right there she would stay at home with the kids. It was hard financially. It was hard to live in such an expensive place where the cost of living is so high. But we knew that we would never get that time back and that my wife would never be able to rewind the clock and say, "I want to be a mom now. I want to be there when they start crawling and start walking. I want to be home I want to pick them up from school. I want to be at every single school event." We knew that we couldn't get that back. And so we made that decision beforehand that she would be a stay at home mom. And so she was for 17 years. And once our youngest child went back to kindergarten and started school, I tried to convince her. I said, "Okay, this is your time. Let's go back." And she says, "Nah, I'm not sure I'm ready yet." And so she subbed, and so she was on the sub list, and she only went back full time teaching 2 or 3 years ago. But I mentioned this because we had to learn to live within our means. We never overspent. We never, to this day, we've never had a new car. Um, Not that we never wanted one, but it just wasn't on our high enough on our priority list. We could get great cars that were 5 or 6 years old. We didn't have to have top of the line. So we made a lot of sacrifices.
And I don't know that I would even call it sacrifices. I would say it's just choices, right? Because you lived your life with your children that a lot of people don't get to live, right? So it comes back to this idea of 5 areas. Like, what's abundance look like in these 5 areas? Your family life, abundance in the financial life, and it sometimes it's a trade off. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a trade off. It's just a choice. But I think it's from what I hear you telling me in our previous conversations, it's about the intentionality of it. It's about you guys were very intentional before. I mean, obviously, your wife is very intentional before she got married to make that point to you, right? It's like, this is what I want, and if we can be together, we can be married. If we can agree that this is the path where we're going to go, and that's being intentional. And I think, not even I think, I know people are not intentional about their money. It's funny because we talk often that high incomes don't create to wealth, or do they create to abundance in all 5 areas? It's one area, right? You could have a lot of income, but you might have a terrible family life, or you might have terrible spiritual life, or whatever it might be. But I think it's the intentionality to say we want abundance, and it's probably before we had a framework to talk about it. But you guys were already there. It's like you were looking for intentionality in your abundance in your 5 areas, and you're already starting to map that out. And I think that's really valuable. It's like, what does success look like for you guys? And you define it with your kids, having 6 kids, and being able to be there for all events and all opportunities, and then those things that she laid out very early, and that was the intentionality, and that was the abundance that you were looking for, and you achieved that.
Totally, 100%. And that's why I married her, because I knew that she would, number one, be a great mom. Not just a great mom, a great leader, a great
Yeah,
thought leader, a great example to our children of how to think about things intentionally, like what you mentioned.
yeah, and I think that's really a key there. It's not about being a mom or dad or a parent. It's about being a leader, and then how do we instill those leadership qualities to that next generation? Because I think that's where in my mind, that's where this idea of infinite banking comes into play. It's like it's valuable to me, but more importantly, it's valuable to my son and future generations to
Totally.
teach and understand that. I mean, I'll receive benefit out of it. I have no doubt. But I didn't get this till I was 35, right? I don't know when did you first introduce to this
Oh, it
idea?
was in my 40s.
Yeah.
Well, I had learned about the infinite banking concept maybe in my early 40s, about 43-ish.
Mm-hmm.
I was introduced to the concept. I did not initially grasp onto it. I kind of threw it by the side because it was so different from anything that I had heard. It was it was kind of like the total opposite of what I was taught. And so because of that, it took me time. It took me time to be reintroduced. And years later, I finally read the book. I finally read Nelson's book. And that's when the brain started to think a little more deeper and I could started cranking. And my brother was actually the one that started his first policy before me. And that kind of led me on to the path where I am right now.
Well, tell me a little bit about a couple of questions I have always around that is like, what what has that done for you?
Mm.
And what was the one thing that kind of like, you know, something fired off? What was that one thing that fired off that says, this is the pathway I have to go down?
Yeah. I think like most people, I was putting money into my 401k to get my employer match because it was free money, right? So at least I thought.
Yeah.
And I had been doing it for years and years. Like I said, this is my 28th year teaching. So I thought that doing things like that and putting my money in government sponsored programs would give me that seed that would grow. Little did I know that there were better opportunities and there were better ways and environments to place your money that would give you benefits that would not just be good for you, but good for future generations of your family. And so when I learned, I'm a huge legacy guy. I'm all about passing on wealth. And when I say wealth, I don't just mean cash. I'm not just talking about the monetary value. I'm talking about the traditions, talking about the values. I'm talking about the wisdom and the knowledge, the how to that you pass your kids on, that you pass to your kids so that they are able to learn from your mistakes and they are better off because of you. It's not just good enough. It's not good enough to just give them things, right? You want them to earn things and then you want them to preserve things. So within our family right now, as we've instituted our system of policies, which are still growing, the number one rule for us is preserve the wealth. And again, wealth, not just capital, but the traditions and the knowledge that we have on what we believe is best for us financially, spiritually, all those 5 areas that we at Factum talk about.
Boy, that's so valuable because I've heard one of our colleagues, David Zapata, talk about this too. It's like it's not so much preparing the money for the kids, but what are we doing to prepare the next generation for the money? Because wealth is not dollars. Wealth is knowledge and understanding of how to use the dollars and how to embrace it and see it for what it is. Right?
Yeah.
It's just a tool for us to go live that life of abundance that we want to live. And to your credit, you took the first step, and this is the part I ask many people: is like, who's going to be the first in your family to take that first step to say, I'm going to educate, I'm going to start this process, I'm going to teach everybody in my family, I got to be the leader. So you're a tremendous leader as well. I mean, I'm not going to discredit your wife, but the two of you together have are truly leading your family in this life of abundance. And so, because again, it takes that first step, and it takes that first generation and say, okay, because we have to make some choices, and we have to find some discipline. We have to do certain things to make this happen. And part of that is education and awareness and action, right? All those things tied together. So that's the very first step. But It's funny because we think it's big until but it's really this little bump in the road. It's like we have to do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, we're going to look back and say, remember when we started that journey from, I'm going to say from North Dakota to Texas, we got, 3,000 miles to go. That one pothole we hit at the very beginning seemed like a very big deal. But after, 3 days of traveling, you hardly remember it. And that's like a lot of the stuff that we do in life. That's really what we're talking about here is like, it does take some time, it takes some money, it takes some education, some discipline. And if you can do that, you can change not only your life, but quite frankly, all the generations beyond if you can continue with that legacy and that learning.
And Wade, that's the key to me. In Nelson's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, his first golden rule was think long term. I think too many of us don't have, I like to say, this marathon runner's mindset. We think of a sprinter's mindset and we want to be done in 10 seconds, like the 100-meter dash.
Yeah.
When in reality, if we change our perspective to think far beyond us, to think generationally, to think 100 years, maybe 2 or 3 generations past us, and be intentional with our choices, that's when things change. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about everything.
I agree 100%. I don't think you can say it better than that because it is true is that we have to think 2, 3 generations down the road. And if we start thinking that way, then the decisions we make are going to be a whole lot different.
Right.
It's very similar to I'm going to talk to the tsunami again.
Mm-hmm.
Are you preparing long-term survival? Or are you preparing to say, I'm going to see what I can do when that event occurs? And when that event occurs, you're scrambling like everybody else and you might get washed away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Metaphorically, hopefully, just get washed away because events will happen. They always do. And so what are you doing to, prepare yourself to have that what you call a 72-hour bag, and have you checked it, and all that stuff that you've prepared for, are you doing that financially? And this gives you kind of that framework, what you need to do.
Yeah. Let me share a little bit more about this tsunami that happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Because it did come. It didn't come in the magnitude that they expected it. But the water line did recede out. And tsunami isn't such a huge crashing wave as it is a surge of water. And so the main pier here in Kapolui Harbor, it was totally exposed when in reality, it's pretty much up to the top. And so there was a sweeping of water that went out, a surge that came in. It didn't go very far inland, luckily. But again, the scrambling and the chaos that ensued because of that threat, it was uncanny, and it affected us. Our oldest daughter was going back to a different island. She is a teacher. And so her first day of school was today as a teacher, not for kids, but for teachers to come and set up. And so her flight was at the exact same time that the tsunami was supposed to hit at 7 p.m. And so, wouldn't you know, it got canceled. And it was rescheduled for this morning at 6 a.m. So we got up at 4 a.m. so I could take her to the airport. And sure enough, at the airport, lines for days. I mean, everyone was rescheduled. Everyone was trying to get back. I dropped her off. I'm not even sure if she made her flight or not. Right now, it is 6:16 in the morning. Her flight was at 6 o'clock. And as I dropped her off, I gave her a big hug, told her how much I loved her, and that if she missed her flight, not to worry, things would work out. And as I was driving past the TSA line just to get to the gates, backed up. I think her saving grace may just be that, in fact, I'm not sure, does she have one? Well, my wife and I have a TSA Pre-Check pass, which allows us to bypass that big line and go straight through. And I just wanted to metaphorically liken that to putting our money financially in an environment that allows us to bypass all of the chaos, bypass that long meeting. When we put money into our 401ks, we are essentially locking it up for years, for decades, depending on how old you are. You won't be able to access it without penalty until you're 59 and a half. Why would we put our money into somewhere that we don't have liquidity to? The only way to do that, and the only way to get that TSA pre-check and to bypass this long line is to be prepared. And like you said, events will happen, but where are we storing our money that will give us these benefits of liquidity, safety, privacy, all these benefits that we talk about in Factor?
Well, that's a great analogy because that is true. Is like this is the TSC pre-check or the global entry or whatever you're using to
Right.
bypass lines of chaos, which are traditional planning methods. That's a great. I love that, Clark. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to use that. So thank you so much.
I just thought about that this morning as I was driving past that TSA line. So,
So as you've done that, now you've made a conscious decision and say you like teaching so much, you love the family banking conversation that you now want to take it out to a bunch of other people. And this ties in to, and you also love to entertain. I want to touch on that really quick as well,
okay.
because you're an entertainer, but that's part of teaching and having people understand this is like, it doesn't have to be drudgery. It can be a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
maybe just share that with us a little bit too, kind of what your intent is.
Yeah, sure. So, like you mentioned, I am an entertainer. I'm a professional entertainer here in the islands. I am a professional magician. I don't know how many, people actually meet somebody that does it for a living, either part time or full time. I've been blessed to be doing magic professionally at hotels, at parties for over 20 years now. And it's been great. It's been a way for me to get my foot in the door in many different areas, not just as a teacher at school. I use it to engage my elementary kids often, but even in the outside world, when I meet people, a lot of people would actually recognize me. Hey, aren't you that guy with that red jacket on the stage? And say, yeah, yeah. I mean, I performed for almost at every major hotel here, for many corporate events. It's fun. It's fun. But really, I just like building relationships with people. I like getting to know people, understanding their story, and serving them and seeing how I can bring value into their life.
Yeah. And when you kind of marry that with like where you want to go next in your career set is like, hey, you want to go and now you want to teach. Again, you've been teaching and influencing young people for a very long time. But
Yeah.
now it's like, okay, let's take that to the next step. You want to teach and you want to influence, bring value to people, adults at a financial level. But I don't think there's a lot of difference there. But why that pathway? Tell me, what is it? And again, I know what's valuable to you is, this family banking idea and this legacy idea. But as you set up to go down that pathway, what's the thing that brings you happiness around that?
Sure. So, like you mentioned, it hasn't been very long, but I am part of the faculty team with you.
Yeah.
My mission is to help empower families to take control of their finances, never to force. We don't even sell things. We're here to educate, to teach, so that people will be able to make the best decisions for themselves and in their own situations. No matter where you live, no matter if you're single, if you're married, if you have 6 kids, or if you have 20 kids, or if you don't even have kids,
One kid.
how can this concept benefit you and bless you? I think being a teacher has allowed me to see that it's one of the greatest professions in the world. When you, in essence, teach somebody and change their life, you're not just affecting them, you're affecting everyone after them, in their posterity, within their family tree. If you are able to help somebody and teach them something that will benefit generations, to me, that's where the real value is.
Yeah.
And as I found that this infinite banking concept and Nelson's teachings have helped me, I just want to share that message and see who else I'm able to help outside of my family as well as within my family.
Yeah. Well, that's so powerful because you're right. It's not the impact is you're really living a purpose, right? When you start teaching from that standpoint of like, hey, I'm going to have generational impact, and so it's living God's purpose through you, right? And that it's like, how do I shine my light so everybody can benefit from that as much as they want to receive it? Because again, we do. I always say we don't sell, we teach. We don't chase, we lead, and it's so much about. I go back to just knowing Nelson. He used to always say, if you know what's going on, you'll know what to do. And so part of our job is like getting people so they know what's going on, not just the condition thinking. And the knowing what's going on is like, let's get in that TSA pre-check line versus being part of just the regular, chaos that's going on there. And then part of that's just through education. Why doesn't everybody else have TSA pre-check? It's like, and now I hear that quite often too. Why doesn't everybody do this? Well, not everybody's willing to takes them a little bit of time to get educated and have the discipline to do what they need to do, and then take the money to make it happen, right? So those are the three things that is required. But to get into that TSA pre-check line, it takes a little bit of intentionality. And some people, just like, you know, are they prepared? Do they have their, waiting in gas lines, when the tsunami comes, or the event comes in life, they're just reacting instead of, oh, we've planned for this and we have a plan and we know what we're going to do. But to your point, it's that, that's the preparedness. And again, that's living the abundance and the spiritual side, at least how I see it. And I imagine that's the same for you.
Exactly.
So,
I love teaching, and not just teaching, but even learning. I think Nelson talks about this in his book. It's called The Arrival Syndrome.
yeah.
You need to always be open and receptive to learn, to be a lifelong learner. I guess you could say that's the best way I can put it. To continually learn, but to be open to learn. And as I teach, the more I learn. And the more I learn, the more I realize I didn't know as much as I thought I knew.
Yeah. Well, that's living a life of abundance, and that's also, kind of a giver framework. When I love being as open to my clients and to my people as they're open to me, because I think that's when you find real growth, right?
Yeah.
And again, I've been doing it a long time. I've been in this industry a long time, and I can tell you that I've learned more from my clients just by listening to what they're saying and taking kind of their thoughts and like, oh, that's not really an objection. It's a thought that I hadn't thought of. That's how I see it.
Right.
And like, how do we work through that, and how do we address that question? And when you do that, now, okay, I've learned something, and so you try to learn something each and every day.
Yeah. So, wait, now that summer is kind of coming to a close and the school year is revamping up, two of my daughters are going back either to their profession or back to college. I've been having these IBC discussions with my college girls. And more recently, I would say within the last 2 or 3 nights, one of my daughters came up to us and said, "Hey, I think my boyfriend and I are planning to get married really soon. And we want to plan this wedding." So number one, this is in addition to our family, but it's a change in what's going to be happening very soon, probably within the next year or so, maybe less, maybe 6 months. And so she turned to us 2 nights ago, "Mom and Dad, can you help us with the wedding?" And we said, "Of course we can help you with the wedding." And she said, "How much?" And my other daughters joined us really quick because they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear the monetary amount, because they knew that once we set a precedent that when it's their turn to get married, that it would have to be at least here. And so we said, "Well, honey, I think Mom and I will be able to set aside this much amount." And immediately my other daughters kind of perked up and were like, "Wow, I didn't think that you'd be able to have access to this much for an event like this." And after our discussion was done, my daughter, who's going to start her sophomore year in college, she says, "You're getting that from the policy, aren't you, Dad?" I said, "Absolutely." She goes, "See, I'm listening." So being able to utilize and have access to this money. When we've used our policies for cars, and now we're going to be using it for a wedding. We've used it for education, for tuition. But I think the biggest key is never stealing the peas and always replenishing your system so that you'll have access to it later.
Yeah, that's a great lesson for people to take. And I know you've told me the story before, but I want you to share this. I see the surfboards in the background there, by the way.
Yeah.
But your story about, again, people will put money away, and they'll sacrifice. And again, I don't like I say the word sacrifice. We make choices, but what if we could put money away and still participate in life?
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe tell that story you shared with me about surfing that one day with your family. I think it's so impactful.
Yeah. So our family loves to surf. You can probably see it. Look how many surfboards we have right here.
Yeah.
Here in our garage. We love to go where the waves are. And that's the golden rule of surfing, right? You want to go where the waves are, because depending on how big the waves are, that means, number one, you'll have more fun. It'll be more powerful. It'll be less stress. So one day, my son, who is about to enter 8th grade, this is at least 3 years ago, so maybe when he was in 5th grade or so, we went surfing out in this one spot here in Maui called Oluwalu. And the reason I like Oluwalu is because it's not a very far paddle. It's right off the main highway. You park by the pebbles, and you pedal out maybe 50 to 75 yards. Other breaks, it would take you sometimes 200-300 yards all the way out. But this is only 50, 75 yards out. And we were kind of crunched for time. And so I knew we only had about an hour. It was going to be a quick hop in and quick get out. So I took my longboard and I went out. And so did my son. He took his shortboard and he went out. Now, one of the main rules of surfing is the first person who catches the wave is the one that has priority. In other words, you don't drop in on people who's already riding a wave. And so if you go to the furthest point out, if you have a longboard, you can be on that wave catching it before everyone, which means that you'll get the longest ride and nobody will drop in on you. And so that was my thought process. Hey, I have 1 hour. I'm going to catch the biggest wave there is. So I went straight past the furthest person out there. There were only maybe 6 or 7 people out in the water. And so I did. I got there and I'm waiting patiently on my board. And 5 minutes turned into 10 minutes, turned into 15. 25 minutes I was in the water. I hadn't caught a single wave. Why? Because I was waiting for the big wave. I look down and I see my son on the inside bowl catching all the little ones, having the time of his life. Paddling back, little wave. All the ones that I let go, he was catching. We had 5 minutes left in our 1 hour session. I still hadn't caught in a wave. I paddled into the inside with my son. And he goes, "This is a great day, isn't it, Dad?" And I was thinking, no, it's not. And I caught the littlest wave of the day, and my son and I went in. And I shared that story with you, Wade, because I think so many times we wait for the perfect wave. We wait, and it could be a job opportunity. It could be, where am I going
Perfect time to start policy, right? I hear that all the time.
It could be financially. Yeah. Now's not the best time for me to start a policy. But the key to this metaphor is that if you wait and bypass all those little or medium opportunities, you might never have a chance to catch that wave, and you'll be there waiting forever.
I love that's a powerful story. Now I got 2 stories from you. You're a great storyteller, so we get along well together. But I'm going to use those stories because that is powerful. So thank you so much for your time. Now, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, they're in Hawaii, they want to work with you, they want to come to Hawaii to see one of your shows and to do one of your workshops where you're teaching this idea of infinite banking, how do they reach you, Clarke?
Look me up on social media. I'm out there on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram.
Okay.
Or go to our Factum website. You can find my website at factumfoundations.com/Clarke. And Clarke has an E at the end of Clarke, Clarke.
Okay.
Or just go to our Factum website, factumfinancial.com. You'll see a list of all of our agents. There are videos there where you can watch and you can get educated. Reach out to any one of us. We're here to help, to serve, and to educate you.
So, well, I appreciate that, Clarke. Thank you so much. And then let's just go forth and let's find the waves that are fun. Let's not wait for the perfect time because that rarely ever comes. It's like having kids. There's no perfect time to have kids.
That's right.
Let's just engage with it and let's have some fun with it. So thank you so much for your education, for your commitment to doing what we're doing. I know that you're going to change so many lives as you enter into this teaching. It's a whole new teaching realm, but it's really the same skills that you've carried forth and influenced so many other people. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Wade. I appreciate you having me here today.
All right, take care.
Aloha.
Thanks for listening. The first step to something better is seeing it differently. Stay sharp, stay focused, and we'll talk again soon.